Mercedes entered the second half of the 2024 F1 season with renewed vigour, having not only run 3 out of the last 4 races thanks to their drivers marking a huge upturn in performance, but also with the knowledge that when they rock up in Zandvoort, they will have a sizable upgrade package to throw onto the W15 to give them even more pace up against their closest rivals. And that is all thanks to their engineers making a breakthrough with regards to their latest upgrade, which they bought but didn't race with in Spa, after running into problems during its introduction across the opening day of running that weekend. Both drivers reported not being comfortable in the updated W15, with not only bouncing but balance issues throughout the high-speed corners. And as a result of the impending weather coming in for Saturday being torrential rain, the team didn't have the ability to test out some of the setup changes that they wished to make with regards to the bouncing that the drivers had, and so they chose to revert back to the Silverstone package. But what at first was believed to be an underlying issue with the upgrade has turned out to not be the case, with the cause of the bouncing and lack of balance coming from the mechanical setup of the W15. Meaning that the major package, which consisted of a brand new floor, diffuser and beam ring, can be placed back onto the W15 without any worry of these issues returning. Well, that's the plan at least. And here is what Andrew Chauvelin had to say about the team reverting back to the Silverstone package and what they found out with regards after the race.
Now, the reason that we removed that and we essentially reverted the car to the Silverstone spec on Friday night, we did that because we had a good race in Silverstone. Spa and Silverstone are not dramatically different circuits in terms of the corner speed range that you're dealing with. We'd clearly introduced some problems somewhere. We think that was largely due to how we were running the car in Spa, not induced by the updates themselves. That was obviously giving us a bit of bouncing in the high-speed corners, a few issues with the balance. Going to that Silverstone car got it all back to normal. We've since had time to look at the data to understand what it was we did exactly, and knowing that, we're pretty confident that we'll be going for a reintroduction in Zandvoort.
But before we move any further in the video, I am trying to hit the 10,000 subscriber mark on the channel before the end of the year. So if you've enjoyed the content thus far and also want to be some of the first to find out some of the secrets these teams are hiding, such as the updated Mercedes suspension introduced in Austria, which I covered a whole 2 weeks before the official F1 channel, I might add, subscribe now to this channel. But what exactly were the mechanical problems that the team ran into during the opening practice sessions? And how did it affect the car during the middle sector of the track where downforce is king? So as you all know, there's many components on the Formula 1 car that are mechanical. This can range from the engine to the gearbox to the suspension and so on and so forth. But not all of these mechanical parts will actually cause the issues that the W15 had with regards to the bouncing. There is only a couple of mechanical parts which would do that. And of course we would have to be talking about the suspension elements on all 4 corners of the W15. And so this is where the issues lie with regards to the bouncing. Now this next part is going to be purely speculation based on what the statements have come out from Andrew Chauvelin and the team with regards to the bouncing. But what we can say for certain is it's no doubt that the setup from which the team chose to go out for the opening 2 practice sessions were totally wrong. And the reason behind that is there is a rumour that the levels of load generated from this new floor far outweighed the data that they got from their simulations back in Brackley and Brixworth, and so they set the car up in the wrong window in terms of the amount of stiffness needed to basically compensate for the load generated. And that was the issue that the team faced in Belgium during the opening day of practice. So essentially the team went into the opening day with too soft a suspension setup on the W15, and as a result they had to basically essentially just put up with this issue throughout the opening day, because the amount of time lost between both 1 and 2 in terms of the practice sessions would have been too much for the team, and they wouldn't have been able to gather all the other important information that they would need from these 2 practice sessions, namely the tyres and how they were interacting with the car and the rate of degradation. So essentially, the suspension on a Formula 1 car can be set up in 2 different manners. It can either be soft suspension or stiff suspension, and they have 2 different effects on the overall characteristics of a car. So let's start off with having soft suspension. So essentially, these softer springs are much more flexible and can absorb road irregularities, resulting in a smoother ride. And softer cars may also provide more grip, which can make taking the corners faster, but there is a side effect to that. The softer suspension can also cause excessive compression, and in this case that would mean the compression of the floor with regards to the level it is at to the ground. And this of course is where the bouncing occurs. The closer to the ground you get, the more chances of the bouncing occurring. And I think this was the major issue that they ran into with running too soft a suspension on the opening day of the weekend. Now, the car would of course then need to be reset up, and then for the W15's suspension to be stiffened to cope with the levels of load which were introduced thanks to this upgraded floor. And what this would allow with the stiffer suspension settings on the W15 is it would be more resistant to the compression. So this would improve not only the handling but the stability, and also reduce the body roll as a result. And a stiffer suspension can also make cornering more comfortable and confident for the respective drivers. And another important aspect, it would maintain the vehicle's height in different conditions, which of course is an important factor in terms of the aerodynamics of these ground effect era cars. And this is what I believe Mercedes have found out after the event took place. And that's why they have full confidence in just reintroducing the floor at Zandvoort in 3 weeks' time. And they just feel when they go into that weekend with stiffer suspension to begin with, they won't incur any of the issues from which they had in the opening 2 practice sessions in Belgium. And of course, I believe that's going to be the case, particularly with the upgraded front suspension that they introduced in Austria. It's just a case of fine-tuning the setup and introducing stiffer suspension as a result. And I think this will of course then help them bring a more performance naturally into the W15 when it comes to the competition. And I believe this will then enable them to be within the ballpark in terms of fighting for pole position and the race win next time out in Zandvoort, which will be very encouraging for the team. Right guys, I am going to end the video here. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, of course, do leave a like down below and leave any comments with regards to what we've spoken about in this very video. Right guys, I will catch you all later in another Formula 1 video shortly.